I had a very serious conversation with myself and then with Stuart after I went in mental circles about whether or not I should continue down this road talking about Opus Dei, whether or not it was beneficial, whether or not it was healthy for myself mentally, whether or not it's safe, honestly, because some of the things that I'm finding out seem very dangerous. It has been mentally exhausting in a lot of ways this past week, and I've realized that if I'm going to continue down this road, I'm going to have to take a very analytical and almost clinical approach to how I talk about all of this and research all of this, because I can take it all so personally. Catholicism was a huge part of my life for a number of years growing up, still a huge part of my family's life, and even though my perception of Catholicism has changed significantly, I am finding out things now that are making me realize that everything that I grew up with and was told to believe in was built on lies. And that is very, very heartbreaking. But I want to come back to square one with this video because there is a real reason why I started talking about Opus Dei to begin with. It wasn't because I have some vendetta against them or anything like that. It's not because I have it out for the Catholic Church or something like that. It's because there are very real victims and survivors and family members of those survivors who have been through terrible, terrible things and have not yet had their cases acknowledged or their day in court. And if Opus Dei and the Catholic Church has their way, most likely never will. And I stumbled across a headline earlier this week, or the week before, that reminded me of that fact, of why I started all of this and got me started on this outline. Because as fascinating as all of the Vatican intrigue and government stuff and all of that, as fascinating and interesting as that is, and as important as I think it is to talk about it because it shows us so much about this organization's true intentions, at the end of the day, this is really about the people of Opus Dei, people who have been thrust into these horrible environments and come out the other side a lot worse off and with little to no support from this thing that they put so much of themselves in. That's absolutely galling to me. And I crave justice for them. I crave justice for victims of all crimes, but sex abuse especially has a very close place in my heart because it impacted my life in a myriad different ways through people that I have known for years and years and years. And I think that it's important to create spaces for conversations about sex abuse, because if you do not, you end up with situations in these highly restrictive religious settings where that kind of thing can thrive because of the kind of people that are attracted to religion, and it creates this whole big mess. I know this is the longest intro ever, but this is just some of the stuff that has been on my mind the past week or so as I've been going through and researching all of this and continuing to research Opus Dei as a whole, and I've really had to ask myself whether or not this was a beneficial thing for me to do. But it isn't really about me, it's about the victims, and I am reminded of that not only by the articles that I am finding, but also by real people who are reaching out to me through DMs and emails thanking me for talking about this, telling me that I'm correct, that I'm on the right path, and asking me to continue. People are scared to death to talk about this organization and what has happened to them, the things that they have seen. They are scared to death to speak out about Catholicism. And so they always reach out to me privately because nobody wants to speak publicly and run the risk of having something come back on them, which I think just speaks volumes for how toxic and negative this whole situation is. That needs to be exposed and talked about. And if I'm the only one who's willing to do it, me with my teeny tiny little channel and my camera phone, well then so be it. Because somebody has to. It's got to start somewhere. On their own, Opus Dei and the Catholic Church are doing a pretty piss poor job of handling the situation. So all that said, today with this video, we are going to be talking about sex abuse in Opus Dei, an absolutely heartbreaking topic that needs to be discussed. The article that I saw, I found purely by accident. I just happened to be scrolling through the news headlines on my phone, and I came across a South American news website with the headline, "Abuse Victim of Opus Dei Priest Wants Case Acknowledged." And I think I saw this around the 14th or 15th, which was last week, and this story was published on the 13th of this month, so this is a new development, and what come to find out is a very long, heartbreaking story. So we're going to start there, and then kind of work our way backwards, because come to find out there are other stories just like this one, and you find them when you start to dig, and I think it really points to some troubling themes within Opus Dei. All of the sources for this video will be linked down below, as always, so please go and check those out in your own time. I found a website called mgr.org that has a pretty comprehensive breakdown of this particular case, so we're going to go over that. So the alleged victim was known only by the initials MGF. He resided at the Colegio Mer Almonte in Seville, Spain, a residence center for young men that is attached to the University of Seville. So it's either a numerary center or a student residence, like we've talked about in the past. It is a corporate work of Opus Dei in operation since 1967 and is operated and controlled by an Opus Dei board, including an Opus Dei director and chaplain. These university-based centers are a major recruiting ground for the prelature, which we keep saying over and over again. Born in 1984, MGF was recruited by Opus Dei in 1999 at the age of 15 or 16, so very young, again in that high school to college age, very young, very impressionable. At age 18, when the abuse began, he was a celibate numerary of the prelature, and therefore was required always to make his regular confession to an Opus Dei priest, in this case Father Cucina. 18 years old, and he had already taken a celibate vow to Opus Dei. And of course Opus Dei says they don't require their members to take vows, that's not what it's about, blah blah blah, but yet every single year they require their members to reaffirm their dedication to Opus Dei, and then after a certain number of years it jumps to every 5 and so on and so forth. Seems like those are vows to me, but we won't go there right now. According to Cucina's accuser, the sexual abuse took place after confession between 2002 and July 2003, at which time the alleged victim left the Opus Dei residence hall but not the prelature. As a numerary, he was assigned to an Opus Dei house in Madrid. In 2007, Cucina became rector of the Basilica of St. Michael in downtown Madrid. The specific charges leveled by MGF against Cucina is that the priest massaged the young man's genitals at least 7 different times after the young man's confession to him. MGF stated that at least four other young men had reported similar episodes of abuse at the hands of the same Opus Dei priest. According to MGF, Cucina made contact with him by electronic means until 2010, when the Opus Dei numerary decided to exit the work completely. It took MGF 3 months to receive his dispensation from the prelature. During this time, MGF obtained a meeting with the Opus Dei regional director in Madrid, who listened to his accusations against Cucina. And this part just blows my mind. The director told MGF that he himself was reluctant to relay the charge to his superiors because he was unsure if the acts of massaging the victim's genitals had a sexual connotation. Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't aware that in addition to celebrating Mass and hearing confessions, Opus Dei priests also check prostates. Like, what else would he have been doing? How does that not have a sexual connotation? There's no reason any priest anywhere should be touching anyone's genitals. Can we just accept that as a basis for reality that should not be a thing? The director told MGF that the revelations would hurt. Yeah, no kidding. And that the young man should shut up, pray for the priest, and not worry. That is just completely unacceptable. And the fact that that even happened at all is just mind-blowing to me. MGF, who moved to Chile in 2013, followed the director's advice and remained silent until 2018. Poor guy. Under the Opus Dei regime of directors filing regular reports on numeraries in the prelature, there is no question in this reporter's mind that the director immediately informed Opus Dei officials in Rome of MGF's accusations, but the matter was kept under wraps until 2019. So the victim went forward, told the correct persons what had happened to him, and the person responsible for maintaining order and making sure that things go the way they're supposed to go within Opus Dei basically just told him to shut up and go away, and that it was basically a non-issue and that they shouldn't bring scandal onto this Opus Dei priest. Prophetically, it was the Caradima sex abuse scandal in Chile that convinced the young man, now married with a wife and 2 children, to break his years of silence. The reader may recall that in 2015, the sex abuse case of Chilean serial pederast Father Fernando Caradima, a spiritual leader among Santiago's most prominent families, and the subsequent cover-up by members of the Chilean hierarchy made world headlines. Caradima has since been defrocked by the Holy See. MGF, who is still suffering from guilt and shame associated with his sexual abuse by Cucina, recalls thinking, "Manuel Cucina is the Caradima of Opus Dei." In 2017, Kachina contacted MGF as a friend contact on LinkedIn. It was then that MGF learned Kachina was still a priest in good standing in Opus Dei and that he had resumed a more active role in Opus Dei and the Spanish Church. After Pope Francis' 3-day visit to Chile in January 2018, in which the pontiff asked for forgiveness for the sex abuse scandal in the church, MGF made the decision to go public with his accusations against Kachina. Time and time again, we see this happen, where a victim comes forward to the leaders of the church or religious organization saying, X, Y, and Z happened to me, and the leadership basically tell them to go away and be quiet because they don't want to expose and bring shame and blah, 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 all this other ridiculous stuff, and then they cover it up and hide it for as long as they possibly can until it blows up in their face because the victim does the responsible thing and comes forward to civil authorities making a formal accusation, and then the church goes, oh, well, now they're caught between a rock and a hard place, and only then do they do something about the situation. And at that point, it's a scandal, and it never would have reached that point if they just would have done the right thing from the beginning, but that seems to be completely beyond them. So jumping now to the article that I saw, it's from a website called Crux Taking the Catholic Pulse, and we're going to jump down a little bit further into the article because the first bit of it just restates what we already read. It says, by December 2018, the file is at the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, the Vatican office that handles allegations of sexual abuse by priests. It was this office that ruled on June 30th that the priest had been found guilty. The sentence was communicated to MGF, but no formal statement has been made. Furthermore, a representative of Opus Dei reportedly told MGF that no statement should be expected because his case, quote, wasn't that big. Don't expect the organization that you placed so much trust and faith and time and energy into to make a statement about this terrible thing that happened to you at the hands of one of their members, because it just wasn't that big of a deal, okay? Just go away, be quiet, okay, fine, we acknowledge what happened. Just don't expect us to say anything about it, because it's really not a big deal. How insensitive. MGF says, I'm very glad with the fact that there's a sentence because it means that what happened is finally acknowledged. At times, I felt I was crazy that I was making it up. The sentence is small, 5 years suspended and 5 more years locked in his center, but I haven't seen the sentence and I've received no institutional call from Opus Dei confirming it. The person who told me was the man appointed by the prelate, who's a lovely person and who's been nothing but helpful and forthcoming, but who told me that, quote, this is canon law. You don't have a right to the sentence, nor right to know who said what, end quote. MGF says, the accused and I are not on even footing. I notify the church of the abuse, and it's the church, Opus Dei, that canonically makes the accusation to the CDF. Quote, I know there are other accusers in the case against Kachina. And that's what I want to know as well, because in the MGR article that we read first, it stated that there were at least 4 other known victims, according to MGF, who had suffered abuse at the hands of Kachina. What about them? Was any attempt made to contact them and encourage them to come forward, or were they told to shut up, pray, and just go away and ignore the problem as well? It seems like that's a lot more likely. MGF goes on to say that I'm not going to change canon law, but what I want is for Opus Dei to release a statement saying that this person has been found guilty as they did when the allegation was made. I want a statement to be made, not because I'm obsessed with this story being in the media, but because some people know who I am. There are people in Spain who know I made the allegations, and I want for it to be publicly acknowledged. I didn't lie. I'm not a crazy man who did this out of hatred of the work. And I think that is the saddest part in all of this, because these victims finally gather the courage to come forward and say something. Of course, by that point, it's a civil case and it blows up and everybody finds out about it. And then you've got people passing judgment like they do, saying, oh, he's probably lying, he probably made it up. Can you imagine? No priest would ever do such a thing, making excuses for this predator. And because of the fact that no sort of real due process is followed and nobody is held accountable, it ends up looking like a wild goose chase, some sort of red herring to make the church look bad instead of an actual real problem with actual real victims involved. And this is not a new thing whatsoever. We're going to jump back to the year prior, now 2019, to an article published on Church Militant, Opus Dei overshadowed by recent sex abuse scandals, and it goes through a few in here. The Associated Press reported in February that Father Patricio Astorquiza, an Opus Dei priest serving in Chile, is being investigated for alleged sex abuse of 2 male minors. The allegations involve harassment with possible sexual connotations. There is another story of a Jose Maria Martinez Sanz who is serving an 11-year prison sentence. He was a member of Opus Dei, and he taught at an Opus Dei run school, and he was convicted in November of raping a male student repeatedly between the years of 2008 and 2010 when the student was 11 to 13 years old. But it gets worse. I know you don't think it can, but it does. The allegation first came to light in 2010, but an internal investigation by the school resulted in clearing Martinez's name, so he was off scot-free. The CDF also conducted its own investigation, closing the case in 2015 after the allegations could not be proven. The victim's family claims, however, that they had never been notified of the Vatican investigation, nor were they given a chance to present evidence on the victim's behalf, which is just crazy to me. In what legal proceeding would the victim not have their case heard? It makes absolutely no sense to me. Canon law needs some work, if this is actually canon law and not just an example of people working the system, which honestly is probably a lot more likely. The victim sought justice in the secular courts, receiving vindication on November 15th, 2018, when the provincial court handed down its sentence of 11 years prison time for Martinez. So the church investigation, the school investigation, all were like, nah, it's inconclusive, he's a good guy, he's fine, we're gonna clear his name. The victim finally sought a civil solution, went to the civil courts, and they found him guilty, and he received 11 years prison time, and hopefully he is still there rotting. There's a really heartbreaking statement from the father of the victim. He says, "We have been humiliated, mistreated, and harassed by Opus Dei officials and have suffered from their inhuman treatment of my son and our family. Unlike the traditional wooden Catholic crucifix, Opus Dei reminds me of a pure crystal cross without a corpse. It is hard and brittle. It has no heart. It shows no mercy." Imagine what that family and those parents must be going through, knowing that they sent their child to this school in good faith, and because of that decision, their child suffered terrible abuse at the hands of a teacher. This article touches on Father C. John McCloskey. Remember Uncle Charlie from my first video? We won't go into that because I already did that story, but it notes something interesting that I did not know. As of 2019, Opus Dei was still investigating other sexual misconduct allegations against McCloskey. There was the settlement that they paid to the woman who came forward, but apparently there's other stuff that he did along the way that they are still trying to get to the bottom of, which is just crazy to me. But again, I guess I really shouldn't be surprised, because it seems like in most of these cases it's not like a one and done type of abuse situation. These people are serial abusers, and you find one victim and there's a whole trail of victims behind them. There's another mgr.org article that goes over the response of the Opus Dei to the Priestley sex abuse scandal. The whole thing is interesting. I'm not going to read it all. There's a few points I want to touch on. They say here that the response of several Opus Dei spokesmen to the victims could be summarized as, quote, "let them eat cake." The mindset that Opus Dei brings to Vatican policymakers would ensure the continuation of the cover-up into the indefinite future. There's a statement in here that just blew my mind from some Italian priest who's all a gaga over Opus Dei. It says, "Yes, there is a crisis in the church in many countries, and yes, many priests continue to contribute to it, but this should inspire us to pray more for the priests and for their sanctification, rather than to publicly ridicule them as a group or even under pseudonyms." I am all for prayer. Pray all you want. Pray night and day. If that is what you feel is making a difference, if that is what brings you peace, absolutely do that. But this is an attempt to minimize a very serious situation by comparing the public demanding an accountability for the actions of these people to public ridicule. Oh, they're just publicly ridiculing. They're just gossiping about. It's just so much talk. No, it's people wanting a solution to a very real problem that has been ongoing for thousands of years, you guys. This has been a problem, and there is canonical Vatican literary proof of that. And people want a change. They are demanding a change. That's not public ridicule. That is people demanding for something to be done about these victims and about what has happened to them. Time and time again, you see these people speaking out on behalf of the Catholic Church or Opus Dei or whatever, and all they're doing is minimizing the seriousness of the situation and using verbal judo to kind of skirt around actually addressing the problem and answering the questions that they're being asked in the interviews. It's incredibly frustrating, and I have yet to see anybody actually call them out on it, which is just crazy to me. It's so obvious to me when I'm sitting here reading through these things and reading these articles and watching these interviews and stuff that is exactly what's happening, but nobody seems to be picking up on it. Like, am I crazy here? I don't think that I am wrong, and yet they keep doing it and keep getting away with it. Towards the end, there's a part here that really just kind of gave me a little bit of a chill. If I had read this a couple of weeks ago, I probably wouldn't have thought anything of it. I would have just thought, oh, this is just them referring to the Catholic Church as the true church who will rise above, good conquering evil and that kind of thing. That would have been how I would have taken it. Knowing what I know now, all of which I am definitely not going to be getting into in this video at this point, it takes on a much more sinister tone. They're comparing America's public outrage and media coverage of all of the stuff that has happened to persecution. They're comparing it to persecution that Christians experienced during the Roman age and during World War II and all of this stuff, which is just not the case at all. But towards the end, it has a quote from a lay canon lawyer associated with Opus Dei who said, "Any country that has historically persecuted the church at the height of its power collapsed." Knowing what I know now, the way that I take that is very different from the way that I would have taken it before, and puts me in mind of the saying, history is written by the winners. And who has been a big winner throughout all of history for as long as it's been around? The Catholic Church. I don't want to get into it all here. This really isn't the time or the place. It's not what this video is about, but suffice it to say, my perception and understanding of world history, how it was taught to me, has changed dramatically, and I do not think the truth is as it seems. And I do believe that the Catholic Church is at the center of that. So to wrap it up, there is a final paragraph at the end of that first MGR article that we read that states that Opus Dei has revealed a new set of protocols. However, this article was written in 2019, and according to this article, the new protocols were unveiled in 2013. So I'm not exactly sure how current these measures are and how realistic and real they are. It says that the Opus Dei Information Office revealed in December 2013 that it had formulated and approved a set of sex abuse protocols for cases involving minors, which includes the creation of a new Opus Dei position of Child Protection Coordinator for Spain. Opus Dei also told the press that it had a sex abuse hotline in place to receive complaints involving Opus Dei priests, numeraries, supernumeraries, cooperators, and other personnel connected to the prelature. However, it is more likely that sex abuse victims of Opus Dei personnel will take their complaints directly to police authorities or to the Independent New Abuse Victim Hotline. It seems to me, given that this was a statement put out in 2013, but we have new and developing stories as recent as 2018, 2019, and this year, 2020, their plan failed. Or, as is so often the case, and what I believe is the case here yet again, this was nothing more than an effort on Opus Dei's part to save face and to make themselves look good, because they're not actually interested in correcting any problem. They just want to maintain their image. And it seems very likely to me that these hotlines that they instituted and these child protection coordinators weren't really invested in protecting or helping anyone so much as they were intercepting cases before they could blow up and hit mainstream media. I don't have necessarily any proof of that per se, but based on some of the things that we read in these stories, statements that were made by Opus Dei officials to victims, that seems very, very likely to me. At the time of this article that was written, this new sex abuse victim hotline had already received 20 cases of alleged abuse involving the prelature. 20 cases. Those are the ones that were known, plus these others that we talked about. How many more are there that we don't even know about? It's a really sickening thing to think about, especially in light of the fact that Opus Dei does not act as if they are invested in helping victims seek justice and in getting rid of problematic criminal persons within their organization. It's just not something that's a priority for them. That is where I'm going to leave it for now. I think this is an important thing to talk about for all the reasons that I stated at the beginning of this video. It's important to come back to kind of square one and reaffirm why I'm doing all of this to begin with, and it's because of situations like this. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did. Thank you to everyone who has been sending me information, reaching out, talking to me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys are all awesome. I appreciate the support more than you can possibly know. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video if you know someone who might benefit from seeing it. And I hope that I will see you for the next video, whenever and wherever that may be. Bye, guys.